A mother helps a lost girl, misses her job interview, then gets a call that changes everything. Enjoy the story. The alarm clock rang at 5 in the morning. Denise's heart raced. Today was the day. After months of living on the edge, eating, little so her son wouldn't go hungry, sleeping on the couch because she couldn't pay the full rent. This job interview was her only chance to change her life. She took a deep breath, trying to ignore the butterflies in her stomach. She made weak coffee, grabbed the only formal outfit she had, a blouse that had lost its color and pants that were too tight, and got ready quickly. She looked at her son still sleeping on the thin mattress, kissed his forehead and hurried out. The receptionist position was everything she needed. The salary wasn't high, but it was steady. It would put food on the table without depending on donations. It would let her breathe. The clock showed 6:40. She still had time. The subway was a few blocks away, but then something made her stop. A girl. Small, thin, dirty hair, torn clothes. She was sitting on the sidewalk, shivering from cold, her face marked by hunger. No one around seemed to notice. Cars passed by. People looked away. But Denise couldn't. She narrowed her eyes. No, not now. She checked the time. If she hurried, she would arrive on time. But what if it were her son there? Lost, hungry, helpless. She knelt down slowly. "Hi, sweetheart. Where's your mummy?" The girl's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I'm hungry." Denise felt a lump in her throat. Her pocket was almost empty, but there was a bakery nearby, just 5 minutes. She held the girl's hand and took her into the small establishment. She ordered a warm bread and a glass of milk. The girl ate desperately. Denise swallowed hard. It might have been her only meal in days. Her watch beeped. 7:10. "I need to go, sweetie. Is someone from your family looking for you?" The girl shook her head. Despair overtook Denise. She couldn't leave her alone. With trembling hands, she called social services. They promised to send someone, but it would take time. Each passing second was a knife plunged into her chest. If she stayed, she would miss the interview. If she left, she would leave the girl alone in the world. Looking into those innocent little eyes, she already knew the answer. She waited until 2 social workers arrived, but by then it was too late. She ran like never before. She jumped into the subway at the last second, but each stop seemed like an eternity. When she arrived at the interview building, the clock showed 7:47. She flew up the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. "Please, let me in," she begged the receptionist. The woman didn't even look up. "The interview started promptly at 7:30. You missed the appointment." "But please, I need this job." "Rules are rules, I'm sorry." Denise felt her legs weaken. The ground seemed to disappear. Everything she had fought for, the sleepless nights, the desperation, everything was in vain. She left the building, aimlessly. The air seemed heavier, the world around her spinning slowly. She sat on a park bench, staring at her empty hands. How would she look her son in the eyes now? How would she explain that she lost the only opportunity they had? The tears came without warning. "I just wanted a chance. Just one." The phone vibrated in her pocket. She ignored it. What did it matter now? But then she answered, without the strength to speak. "Hello, is this the lady who helped a little girl this morning?" Denise frowned. Yes, that's me. Who's speaking?" "My name is William Sanchez. That girl is my niece. She's been missing since yesterday. You saved her." Denise's eyes widened. "I didn't know. I know you missed your interview. I know you helped my niece even when it cost you your opportunity. People like you are rare." Her heart raced. What do you mean?" "I mean my company needs people like you. The position you were going to compete for doesn't compare to what I have to offer. I have a management position open. Salary 3 times higher. Full benefits. And something tells me I won't find anyone better." Silence hung in the air. Denise could barely breathe. "Are you serious?" More than ever. Her chest filled with emotion. Suddenly, it all made sense. The delay, the loss, the pain. It was all necessary for this to happen. "I accept," she said, holding back tears. "Great. We start on Monday." When she hung up, Denise looked at the sky. A sob escaped her throat. She did it. And she succeeded because she chose what was right, even when it seemed like it would lead her to ruin. She stood up, feeling the weight of the world lift from her shoulders. Now yes, she could go home and look her son in the eyes. Now yes, she could say with pride, "Mommy did it." Chapter 2. The ride home felt surreal to Denise. The same subway that had seemed so cold and unforgiving just hours before now hummed with promise. She found herself smiling at strangers, her body light as if gravity had lessened its hold on her. As the train rumbled through Boston's underground tunnels, Denise replayed William's words in her mind. Management position, 3 times the salary, full benefits. It sounded too good to be true, yet the conviction in his voice had been unmistakable. When she exited the station, the city looked different somehow. The grey skies that had threatened rain all morning had parted, allowing weak sunlight to filter through. The same streets she had trudged down in desperation now seemed to welcome her with each step. Her phone buzzed again, a text message from William with the address of his company and instructions for Monday. It was real. This was happening. Denise quickened her pace. She couldn't wait to tell Tommy about their changing fortunes. At 6 years old, he was too young to understand their financial struggles fully, but children always knew more than adults, gave them credit for. The worry lines on his small face whenever she skipped meals to ensure he ate, those weren't the marks a child should bear. When she turned onto her street, she saw Mrs. Patterson, her elderly neighbor, sitting on her porch. The woman had been a godsend these past months, watching Tommy when Denise picked up odd jobs cleaning houses or delivering food. "How did it go, dear?" Mrs. Patterson called out, her weathered face creased with concern. Denise bounded up the steps to the porch, unable to contain her excitement. "I missed the interview," she started, and Mrs. Patterson's face fell. But something incredible happened instead. As she recounted her morning's events, Mrs. Patterson's expression transformed from sympathy to astonishment. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," the older woman said finally, patting Denise's hand. "You did the right thing by that child, and right came back to you." Denise nodded, though she wasn't sure if it was divine intervention or simply human. Kindness recognizing itself. Either way, she was grateful. "Tommy will be over the moon," Mrs. Patterson added. "That boy deserves some good news." "Is he still at your place?" Denise asked. "No, Barbara from 3B took him to the library with her kids. They should be back soon." Denise thanked Mrs. Patterson again and headed to her apartment. She needed a moment alone to process everything before sharing the news with Tommy. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it, small, sparse, but clean. She'd always prided herself on maintaining dignity despite their circumstances. The worn couch that doubled as her bed, the kitchenette with its single burner stove, the small table with 2 mismatched chairs, and the corner that was Tommy's space with his mattress on the floor and a small bookshelf filled with second-hand books. She sank onto the couch, finally allowing the emotion of the day to wash over her. The tears came again, but these were different, cleansing, grateful tears that released months of pent-up fear and worry. A better life for Tommy. That was all she'd ever wanted. She thought about the lost girl again. In helping her, Denise had risked everything, yet somehow gained even more. It seemed almost poetic, though she knew countless others made similar sacrifices daily without such fortuitous outcomes. There was a rapid knocking at the door, followed by the unmistakable sound of Tommy's voice calling out to her. She quickly wiped her eyes and opened the door. There he stood, his backpack nearly as big as he was, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "Mom, you're home early. Did you get the job?" Denise knelt down and opened her arms. Tommy rushed into them, and she held him tight, breathing in his familiar scent of crayons and playground dust. "I got something better," she whispered into his hair. "Much better. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you." Continuing. Chapter 3. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that had Denise awake before her alarm. The weekend had passed in a blur of preparation. She'd used her last bit of savings to buy a new blouse for her first day and, had spent hours researching William Sanchez and his company, Horizon Solutions. From what she could gather online, Horizon was a mid-sized consulting firm specializing in sustainable business practices. William had founded it 10 years ago after leaving a successful career in corporate finance. The company had a stellar reputation and an impressive client list, including several Fortune 500 companies. What struck Denise most was the company's commitment to social responsibility. Their website highlighted numerous community initiatives and a hiring policy that emphasized diversity and second chances. It seemed like the perfect place for someone like her, someone who needed that second chance desperately. Tommy was unusually cooperative that morning, getting dressed without complaint and even eating his breakfast without being reminded twice. He seemed to sense the importance of the day. "Are you going to have your own office, Mum?" he asked between spoonfuls of cereal. Denise smiled. "I don't know yet, sweetie, but I'll have a real desk, that's for sure." "Can I visit sometime?" "Maybe on a special day," she said, smoothing his unruly hair. "Now finish up. Mrs. Patterson will be here any minute to walk you to school." As if on cue, there was a gentle knock at the door. Mrs. Patterson stood there with a small gift bag in hand. "A little something for your first day," she said, handing the bag to Denise. Inside was a slender silver pen with Denise's initials engraved on it. It looked expensive, and Denise immediately tried to refuse. "This is too much, Mrs. Patterson. I can't—" "Nonsense," the older woman interrupted. "It was my husband's. He always said a good pen brings good fortune in business. It's been sitting in my drawer for years. Please take it. Richard would have wanted it used by someone on the rise." Tears stung Denise's eyes as she carefully placed the pen in her purse. "Thank you. I'll treasure it." After one last hug for Tommy and a promise to tell him everything that evening, Denise set off for her new job. The Horizon Solutions building was in downtown Boston, a sleek glass structure that reflected the morning sun. As she approached, Denise felt her confidence wavering. What if William had changed his mind? What if this was all an elaborate misunderstanding? She took a deep breath, thinking of Tommy's excited face that morning. She couldn't fail. Not now. Not after coming this far. The lobby was minimalist and modern, with a reception desk manned by a young man with a friendly smile. "Good morning," he greeted. "How can I help you?" "I'm Denise Moore. I'm starting today. I have a meeting with William Sanchez." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. "Oh yes, Ms. Moore, Mr. Sanchez is expecting you." He handed her a visitor badge. 15th floor. The elevator will open directly into our reception area. Maggie will help you from there." The elevator ride felt both too short and interminably long. Denise used the time to check her appearance one last time in the mirrored walls. Her new blouse looked professional enough, and she'd managed to make her old pants presentable with careful ironing. Her hair was neatly tied back, and she wore the small pearl earrings that had been her mother's, her one inheritance after her parents' death 5 years ago. When the doors opened, she was greeted by an open-concept office space flooded with natural light. Modern workstations occupied one side, while glass-walled meeting rooms lined the other. At a desk near the elevator sat an older woman with silver-streaked hair and fashionable glasses. "Denise Moore?" she asked, standing to greet. "Yes, that's me. I'm Maggie, William's executive assistant. Welcome to Horizon." She extended her hand, her grip firm and reassuring. "William is just finishing up a call. Can I get you anything while you wait? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be great, thank you." Maggie led her to a small seating area with a view of the Boston skyline. "William told me about how you two connected," she said, as she handed Denise a glass of water. "It's quite remarkable." Before Denise could respond, a door opened, and William Sanchez emerged. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with salt and pepper hair and warm brown eyes behind modern glasses. He wore no tie with his crisp suit, giving him an approachable yet professional appearance. "Denise," he said, warmly crossing the room with his hand extended. "I'm so glad you're here. His handshake was confident but not overpowering. Up close, Denise could see the family resemblance to the little girl she'd helped, the same expressive eyes and defined jawline. "How is your niece?" Denise asked, genuinely concerned. William's expression softened. "Eva is doing much better, thanks to you." "My sister is still shaken but relieved beyond words. Eva wandered off during a crowded farmer's market. By the time my sister realized she was gone..." He shook his head. "Well, we're just grateful you found her when you did." "I'm glad I could help," Denise said simply. "Come, let's talk in my office." He gestured toward the door he'd just exited. "We have a lot to discuss about your new role here." As Denise followed him, she noticed several employees watching with undisguised curiosity. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin, fighting the imposter syndrome that threatened to overwhelm her. Whatever happened next, she had earned her place here through an act of simple human decency. That had to count for something in this world. Chapter 4. William's office was spacious yet understated, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Boston Harbor. A sleek desk dominated one end, while a comfortable seating area occupied the other. The walls featured framed photographs of landscapes, mountains, forests, deserts, all bearing a small plaque with location and date. "Please, sit," William said, gesturing to the seating area. He took the chair opposite Denise rather than retreating behind his desk, a gesture she appreciated. It made this feel more like a conversation than an intimidating first meeting with her new boss. "I imagine you have questions," he began, leaning forward slightly. "This isn't a typical hiring process." Denise nodded, finding her voice. "To be honest, I'm still not entirely sure what position I'm being offered." William smiled. "Fair enough. I should be more specific. We have an opening for a client relations manager in our small business division. The role involves working directly with clients to implement our sustainability consulting packages, serving as their main point of contact throughout the process." Denise felt her heart sink slightly. It sounded important, far more significant than the receptionist position she'd originally sought. "Mr. Sanchez—" "William, please." "William," she corrected. "I should be upfront with you. I don't have a background in business or consulting. Before my son was born, I worked in customer, service and administrative roles. Most recently, I've been doing whatever jobs I could find to make ends meet." Instead of looking concerned, William seemed pleased by her honesty. "We can teach the technical aspects of the job," he said. "What we can't teach is character." "When you found my niece, you were heading to a job interview that could have changed your life. You knew you'd likely miss that opportunity by staying with her, but you did it anyway. That kind of integrity and compassion is exactly what we need in client relations." He leaned back, studying her with those keen eyes. "Our clients are often navigating difficult transitions, moving from traditional business models to more sustainable ones. It's not always smooth. They need someone who can listen, understand their challenges, and guide them with patience and empathy." "I see," Denise said, though she still felt overwhelmed. "Of course there will be training," William continued. "You'll shadow Olivia Chen, our senior manager, for the first month. And yes, the salary is as I mentioned, $72,000 annually, plus benefits and performance bonuses." The figure made Denise's head spin. It was more than triple what she would have earned as a receptionist, triple what she'd ever made in her life. "Why me?" she asked finally, the question that had been haunting her since his call. "You don't know anything about me except for one interaction with your niece." William stood and walked to the window, gesturing for her to join him. Below, Boston sprawled out, a maze of buildings and streets teeming with people. "Do you see all those people down there?" he asked. "Every day they make thousands of choices, big and small. Most choose what's easiest or most beneficial to themselves. That's human nature." He turned to face her. "But occasionally someone makes a choice based solely on what's right, even at personal cost. Those people are rare, Denise, and they're exactly who I want representing Horizon." He returned to his seat. "But if it makes you feel better, I did do some background research over the weekend. Your previous employers spoke highly of your work, ethic and reliability. And Barbara Chen, your neighbor who takes your son to the library, she's Olivia's mother. The world is smaller than we think." Denise was speechless. She hadn't connected Barbara to Horizon at all. "So," William said, a hint of challenge in his voice, "are you in?" In that moment, Denise thought of all the nights. She'd lain awake wondering how she would provide for Tommy. The times she'd had to choose between paying for electricity or buying groceries. The constant grinding anxiety of poverty that had been her companion for so long. "Yes," she said firmly, "I'm in." William's face broke into a genuine smile. "Excellent. Let's get the paperwork started. Maggie has prepared all the necessary forms." The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and explanations of benefits. Health insurance that would start immediately, retirement contributions, paid vacation time. Each new revelation felt like a gift Denise couldn't quite believe she deserved. As William walked her through the office to introduce her to the team, he paused at a workstation where a woman about Denise's age was typing rapidly. "Olivia, this is Denise Moore, our new client relations manager." Olivia looked up, her expression unreadable for a moment before breaking into a genuine smile. "So you're the one who saved Eva," she said, standing to shake Denise's hand. "My mother told me about you. She's been watching your son at the library for months." "Your mother has been so kind to us," Denise said, making the connection to Barbara fully now. "She's a good judge of character," Olivia replied. "If she likes you, that's good enough for me." As they continued the tour, meeting more team members, each greeting her with respect rather than the condescension or pity she'd grown accustomed to, Denise felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of maybe things won't get worse, but the expansive, liberating hope of things can actually get better. By the end of her first day, Denise's head was swimming with new information, names, and procedures. But as she gathered her things to head home, she found William waiting by the elevator. "How was day one?" he asked. "Overwhelming," she admitted. "But in the best possible way." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "It gets easier. And Denise?" He held the elevator door as she stepped in. "That little girl you helped? She asked about you. Would you consider coming to dinner at my sister's house this weekend? She'd like to thank you properly. Bring your son, if you'd like." Denise felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I'd like that very much." As the elevator doors closed, she leaned against the wall, finally allowing the events of the day to sink in. One simple act of kindness had cascaded into this: a new job, new colleagues, a new future. But as the elevator descended, a flicker of doubt crept in. Could someone like her really succeed in this world of polished professionals and corporate strategies? Or was she destined to fail, to reveal herself as the imposter she feared she might be? The thought of returning to the life she'd been living, the constant struggle, the endless worry, was unbearable. Especially now that Tommy had seen the light of possibility in her eyes. No, she wouldn't let that happen. Whatever it took, she would make this work. For Tommy, for herself, for the chance they both deserved. What unexpected challenges await Denise in her new role? Will her past continue to haunt her as she steps into this unfamiliar world of corporate success? And what secrets might William be hiding behind his generosity? The weeks that followed were among the most challenging of Denise's life. Each morning started before dawn, preparing Tommy for school, while simultaneously trying to absorb the mountain of information Olivia shared daily. Sustainability metrics, client protocols, software platforms she'd never encountered before. It was like learning a new language while running a marathon. Olivia was thorough but demanding. "Our clients expect excellence," she'd say whenever Denise made a mistake. "They're paying premium rates for our services. We can't afford errors." On particularly difficult days, Denise would retreat to the bathroom to splash cold water on her face and give herself a silent pep talk. "You can do this," she'd whisper to her reflection. "Tommy is counting on you." The thought of her son, now enrolled in after-school programs they previously couldn't afford, kept her going. He was flourishing with the stability her new job provided. His teacher had even commented on his improved concentration and participation in class. At home, their circumstances were slowly improving. Denise had moved Tommy's mattress from the floor to a proper bed. They'd replaced their single pot with a modest set of cookware. Small changes, but significant. The dinner at William's sister's home had been a turning point. Lisa Sanchez lived in Brookline, in a beautiful brownstone that made Denise acutely aware of the socio-economic chasm between them. But Lisa had welcomed her without a hint of condescension. "You saved my daughter," she'd said simply, embracing Denise with genuine warmth. "There's no way I can ever repay that." Eva, the little girl Denise had helped, was shy at first, but quickly warmed up to Tommy. By evening's end, the two children were playing as if they'd been friends for years. William had been there too, more relaxed in jeans and a casual sweater than his office attire. Denise had observed him with his family, the tender way he spoke to Eva, his easy banter with Lisa, and felt a growing respect for him beyond his role as her employer. "He's a good man," Lisa had told Denise quietly as they watched the children. "After my husband left when Eva was 2, William stepped in. He's been more of a father to her than her biological one ever was." That revelation had added another dimension to William's character in Denise's eyes. He understood what it meant to support a struggling single parent because he'd done it himself. Now 4 weeks into her new role, Denise sat at her desk reviewing client files for an upcoming meeting. Her workspace had gradually accumulated. Personal touches, a small plant from Olivia, a framed photo of Tommy, and a calendar where she meticulously tracked her assignments. Maggie approached, her silver hair gleaming under the office lights. "William would like to see you," she said, her expression giving nothing away. Denise's stomach tightened. Had she made a serious mistake? Was this the moment when the fairy tale ended? She smoothed her blouse, a new one purchased with her first paycheck, and made her way to William's office. He was on the phone but motioned for her to enter. "Yes, I understand," he was saying, his tone firm, "but we agreed to those terms in writing. My team has delivered everything promised." He paused, listening. "I see. Well, I'm disappointed to hear that. But it's your decision. We'll process the contract termination." He hung up, rubbing his forehead briefly before turning his attention to Denise. "Sorry about that. Please sit down." Something in his expression alarmed her. "Is everything all right?" William sighed. "Not exactly. That was Robinson Manufacturing, one of our larger clients. They're terminating their contract early, citing budget constraints." He leaned back in his chair. "Between us, I suspect they found a cheaper service, probably one that will let them greenwash without making substantive changes." Denise nodded, though her mind was racing. Was the company in trouble? Was her position at risk? "I didn't call you in about that, though," William continued. "I wanted to check in on your progress. Olivia tells me you're picking things up quickly." "She's been an excellent mentor," Denise said carefully. "There's still so much to learn, but I'm committed to mastering it." "Good." William studied her for a moment. "Because I'm assigning you your first solo client next week." Denise felt a rush of both excitement and terror. "Already? Are you sure I'm ready?" "It's a small account, Riverside Bakery. They want to transition to sustainable packaging and reduce their carbon footprint. Nothing too complex, but enough to get your feet wet." He slid a folder across the desk. "I chose them specifically because their owner reminds me of you in some ways." "Of me? How so?" "Olivia Jensen started Riverside after being laid off during the recession. Single mother, 2 kids, built her business from nothing. Now she has 3 locations and a growing wholesale business." He smiled. "She'll appreciate your authenticity." Denise opened the folder, scanning the initial consultation notes. "I won't let you down," she promised. "I know you won't." William stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "Oh, and Denise?" "Don't worry about Robinson. We'll weather this. The company is on solid ground." She thanked him and returned to her desk, the folder clutched tightly in her hands. Her first client, a real test of whether she belonged here or not. That evening, as she helped Tommy with his homework at their small kitchen table, Denise found herself distracted by thoughts of the upcoming client meeting. "Mom, are you listening?" Tommy asked, waving his pencil to get her attention. "Sorry, sweetie, just thinking about work." She refocused on his math worksheet. "Let's try this problem again." Tommy frowned at the paper. "I hate fractions," They're stupid. They're not stupid, Denise corrected gently. They're just challenging, like my new job. Sometimes I feel lost too, but I keep trying until I understand. This seemed to resonate with him. Is your job really hard? Sometimes, she admitted, but that's how we grow, by doing hard things. Tommy nodded solemnly. Like when I learned to ride a bike without training wheels. Exactly like that. She ruffled his hair. And next week I'm getting my first client all to myself. It's scary but exciting too. You'll be great, Mom, Tommy said with the unwavering confidence of a child. You're the smartest person I know. His simple faith in her brought tears to her eyes. If only she could see herself through his eyes, capable, strong, limitless. Later, after Tommy was asleep, Denise sat on the couch with the Riverside Bakery file, determined to know it inside and out before her meeting. But as she reviewed the materials, a notification flashed on her phone. An email from her former landlord. The building where they'd lived before, the one they'd left when they could no longer afford the rent, was being demolished for a luxury condo development. The email was a courtesy, informing former tenants they had 1 week to claim any belongings from the storage area before everything would be discarded. Denise had almost forgotten. In their hasty move to this smaller, more affordable apartment, they'd left a few boxes in the building's shared storage. Nothing valuable, mostly mementos and winter clothes they hadn't needed at the time. She made a mental note to stop by that weekend. She could use some of her first proper paycheck to buy Tommy a new winter coat, but it would be good to recover his baby photos and the few keepsakes from her parents. As she returned to her preparation, Denise couldn't shake a nagging sense of unease. Just weeks ago, she'd been one crisis away from homelessness. Now she was preparing to advise a business owner on sustainability practices. The contrast was dizzying. What if Olivia Jensen of Riverside Bakery saw through her? What if she recognized Denise as an imposter playing at professionalism? Worse, what if William regretted his decision to hire her? The lost client today. What if that was just the beginning of troubles for Horizon? She closed the file, suddenly exhausted. One day at a time, she reminded herself. That's how she'd survived this far. One day, one challenge, one small victory at a time. But as she prepared for bed, converting the couch to her sleeping space, Denise couldn't help wondering if she was setting herself up for a spectacular fall. After all, didn't fairy tales always have a dark turn before the happy ending? And who was to say her story would end happily at all? Chapter 6. The Riverside Bakery occupied a cheerful corner building in Jamaica Plain, its large windows displaying artisanal breads and pastries. The scent of fresh baking enveloped Denise as she entered, automatically triggering memories of the few times her mother had baked when Denise was a child, rare, special occasions in an otherwise difficult upbringing. A young woman with a flour-dusted apron greeted her. "You must be Denise from Horizon. Olivia's expecting you. Let me grab her." Denise nodded, grateful for the moment to compose herself. She'd spent hours preparing for this meeting, even practicing her introduction in the mirror that morning. Still, butterflies danced in her stomach. The bakery was busy with late-morning customers, young professionals typing on laptops, mothers, with toddlers sharing pastries, elderly couples lingering over coffee. It had the warm communal atmosphere that successful local businesses cultivated. "Denise?" A woman in her late 40s approached, wiping her hands on a towel. She had streaks of grey in her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and laugh. Lines around her eyes. "I'm Olivia Jensen. Sorry to keep you waiting. Had a small crisis with our sourdough starter." Her handshake was firm, her manner direct but friendly. She led Denise to a small office at the back of the bakery, a cramped space dominated by a desk covered in invoices, flour samples, and what looked like architectural drawings. "Excuse the mess," Olivia said, clearing a chair for Denise. "Running. 3 locations means paperwork multiplies like rabbits." She shuffled some files aside. "William speaks highly of you, says you understand what it means to build something from nothing." Denise felt a flutter of appreciation for William's thoughtfulness in how he'd presented her. "I'm still building," she admitted. "But yes, I know what it's like to start from scratch." Olivia nodded approvingly. "Good, because I don't need consultants." who've only known corner offices and expense accounts. This, she gestured around the small space, this was my dining room table 10 years ago, baking at night after my kids were asleep, selling at farmers markets on weekends. Every dollar earned went back into the business. William mentioned you started after being laid off, Denise said. 14 years at a financial firm, then suddenly redundant at 40. Olivia's expression hardened briefly. Best thing that ever happened to me, though. I couldn't see it then. The parallel to her own life wasn't lost on Denise. Sometimes our lowest moments lead to unexpected opportunities, she offered. Exactly. Olivia leaned forward. So, let's talk sustainability. I want to eliminate plastic packaging from our operations within a year. I want our electrical usage to be offset by renewable energy, and I want to find ways to use our food waste productively. But, she held up a flour-dusted finger, I need solutions that won't bankrupt me. I've built this business on thin margins. I can't afford to be idealistic at the expense of staying open. Denise nodded, relieved to find herself on comfortable ground. After all, wasn't this exactly what she'd done her entire adult life? Find creative solutions with limited resources? May I ask what your current packaging costs are? She began, pulling out the notebook Olivia Chen had insisted she carry to all client meetings. For the next hour, they delved into the bakery's operations, with Olivia freely sharing numbers, challenges, and aspirations. Denise took careful notes, asking questions that revealed her practical understanding of business constraints, if not her technical expertise in sustainability. By the time they finished, Denise had a clear picture of what Riverside needed and, more importantly, what Olivia Jensen needed, practical solutions that aligned with her values without compromising her business. I'll have a preliminary proposal for you by next Wednesday, Denise promised as they concluded the meeting. And if you don't mind, I'd like to visit one of your other locations to get a better sense of your operations across sites. Of course. Olivia walked her to the door. You know, I was skeptical when William told me he was sending someone new, but I think you get it. You're not just selling me a package of green initiatives to make me feel good. You're trying to understand my business. That's exactly what I want to do, Denise affirmed. Sustainable practices only work if they're sustainable for your business too. Olivia smiled, the lines around her eyes deepening. I think we're going to work well together, Denise Moore. As Denise left the bakery, a warm glow of accomplishment spread through her chest. She'd done it. Her first client meeting, and it had gone well, better than well. For the first time since starting at Horizon, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she actually deserved to be there. Her phone buzzed as she was walking to the subway station. A text from William. How did it go with Riverside? She typed back, Great, Olivia was wonderful. Getting started on the proposal now. His response came almost immediately. Excellent. Looking forward to hearing about it. Dinner tomorrow at Lisa's still works for you and Tommy. The dinner invitation had come earlier that week, a casual follow-up to their first visit. Tommy had been asking about Eva ever since, and the two children had formed a fast friendship. Denise had initially hesitated, not wanting to blur professional and personal boundaries, but William had insisted it was just family and friends. We'll be there, she confirmed. Tommy's been talking about it all week. As she rode the subway back to the office, Denise felt a curious lightness. For the first time in years, her life seemed to be expanding rather than contracting. New colleagues, new skills, new friendships even. But as the train pulled into the station nearest Horizon's offices, reality intruded in the form of another email from her former landlord. The demolition schedule had been moved up. She now had only until Sunday to retrieve her belongings from storage. She sighed, mentally rearranging her weekend. She'd have to go tomorrow, which meant missing Tommy's soccer practice. Another mother from his team could take him, but Denise hated missing these moments. She'd already lost too many to the constant struggle for survival. As she walked into the Horizon building, Denise straightened her shoulders, compartmentalizing her personal concerns. Right now, she needed to focus on creating a proposal that would impress both Olivia Jensen and William. She couldn't afford to let either of them down. The elevator doors opened on the 15th floor, and she stepped out to find the office in an unusual state of activity. People were hurrying between meeting rooms, and there was an unmistakable tension in the air. Maggie intercepted her as she headed toward her desk. "Oh, good, you're back. William needs to see you in the main conference room." "Is everything okay?" Denise asked, alarmed by Maggie's serious expression. The older woman hesitated. "Horizon is facing some challenges. William will explain." Denise followed Maggie to the large conference room where she found William standing at the head of the table, surrounded by the senior management team. His expression was grave, but it lightened slightly when he saw her. "Denise, come in. We're just discussing the Robinson situation." He gestured for her to take a seat. "It seems they're not the only client reconsidering their relationship with us." She sat down, feeling suddenly out of place among these seasoned professionals. Why was she being included in what was clearly a high-level crisis meeting? "3 more clients have indicated they may terminate their contracts," William continued, addressing the room. "All cite budget constraints, but our intelligence suggests they're being actively poached by Greenshift consultants." A murmur went around the table. Denise recognized the name from her research, a newer, aggressive competitor that had been making waves in the sustainability sector. "They're undercutting us by 30%, Olivia Chen said, her tone sharp with frustration. "Promising the same deliverables for significantly less investment, which we all know is impossible if you're doing the work properly," William added. "But that's cold comfort if we lose these accounts." He turned to face the window, his back to the room for a moment. When he turned around, his expression was resolute. "Here's what we're going to do. Each of you will personally contact your clients this week. Don't wait for them to come to us with concerns. Be proactive. Remind them of our value proposition, our track record, our relationship." He looked directly at Denise. "Including new clients. Denise, I know you just met with Riverside, but I want you to expedite that proposal. Make it exceptional. We need some good news." The pressure of his expectations settled on her shoulders like a physical weight. Yet mixed with the anxiety was a strange sense of validation. He trusted her with this responsibility, despite her inexperience. "I'll have it ready by Monday," she promised, already mentally cancelling any personal plans for the weekend. Tommy would understand. He always did. As the meeting adjourned, William asked Denise to stay behind. Once they were alone, his professional facade slipped slightly, revealing the worry beneath. "I'm sorry to put this on you so soon," he said, sinking into a chair beside her rather than maintaining the distance of the head of the table. "But you connected with Olivia Jensen in a way our previous representatives haven't. She called me, right after your meeting, specifically to compliment you." Denise felt a flush of pride. "She's exactly the kind of client I want to work with, someone who's built something meaningful despite obstacles." William nodded thoughtfully. "That's precisely why I assigned her to you. Sometimes the best consulting comes from those who've navigated their own hardships." He paused, studying her with those perceptive eyes. "Is everything all right, Denise? You seemed distracted when you came in." She was surprised by his perception, and briefly considered deflecting the question, but something about his genuine concern invited honesty. "Just personal matters," she said. "My old building is being demolished, and I need to retrieve some stored items this weekend. Nothing serious." William frowned slightly. "The proposal can wait until Tuesday if you need time for personal affairs." "No," she said firmly. "I'll manage both. The proposal is the priority." He looked as if he might argue, but instead nodded. "All right, but remember, Denise, your value to Horizon isn't just in what you produce, it's in who you are. Take care of yourself." As she left the conference room, Denise felt a complex mixture of emotions. Pressure, certainly. Fear of failing. But underneath it all, a growing determination. Horizon had given her a chance when she needed it most. Now it was her turn to give back. She returned to her desk and opened her laptop, ready to pour everything she had into the Riverside proposal. This wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about protecting the company that had protected her, about ensuring that Tommy's newfound stability wouldn't be snatched away. As she worked late into the evening, Denise couldn't shake the feeling that everything, her future, her son's future, perhaps even Horizon itself, hinged on what she would do in the coming days. The responsibility was terrifying. But for the first time in her life, she felt equal to the challenge. What will Denise discover in the abandoned storage unit that might change everything? How will her growing connection with William impact both their professional and personal lives? And as Horizon faces mounting threats to its survival, will Denise's unique perspective be the company's salvation, or will her inexperience lead to its downfall? Chapter 7. Saturday morning dawned. Grey and drizzly, a perfect reflection of Denise's mood as she prepared to visit her old building. Tommy sat at their small kitchen table, methodically coloring in a picture of a dinosaur, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. "Are you sure you'll be okay at Jason's?" Denise asked for the third time, packing an extra snack into his backpack. "I could still take you to soccer and go to the storage unit after." Tommy looked up with the patience of a child used to reassuring an anxious parent. "Mom, I'll be fine. Jason has the new Lego set we both wanted, and his mom makes really good cookies." Denise smiled despite her guilt. "All right, but call me if you need anything. I'll come right away." After dropping Tommy at his friend's house, Denise took the subway to her old neighborhood. The familiar streets felt both welcoming and painful, a reminder of the life they'd struggled through just months ago. The building stood as she remembered, though now surrounded by construction fencing. A makeshift sign directed former residents to a side entrance, where a bored-looking security guard checked her ID against a list. "Storage units are in the basement," he said, barely looking up. "You've got until 4 p.m. After that, anything left gets tossed." Denise nodded, stepping past him into the dimly lit hallway. The building felt eerie with most of its residents gone, a ghost of its former self. As she descended the creaking stairs to the basement, memories washed over her. The night Tommy had a high fever, and Mrs. Guthrie from 2C brought over children's Tylenol. The Christmas when the entire floor shared a potluck dinner because the power had gone out citywide. For all its hardships, there had been a community here. The basement was damp and musty, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. She made her way to Unit 17, where a small padlock, one she thought she'd lost the key to, secured the door. To her surprise, the key on her keychain still worked, the lock opening with a rusty click. Inside, 3 cardboard boxes sat exactly as she'd left them, labeled in her neat handwriting, "Winter clothes, Tommy's baby things, and family." She opened the first box, finding Tommy's outgrown winter jacket, her own threadbare coat, and mittens they'd managed without this past winter. Nothing they needed now that she could afford proper replacements. The second box contained tiny onesies, a baby book she'd dutifully kept for Tommy's first year before life became too overwhelming, and the small stuffed elephant that had been his constant companion until age 4, when it had mysteriously disappeared during a move. She set the elephant aside, knowing Tommy would be overjoyed to have it back. It was the third box, family, that she approached with trepidation. She rarely allowed herself to dwell on the past, finding it too painful, too full of what-ifs and might-have-beens. But these were the few tangible connections to her parents, to the life before everything fell apart. She lifted the lid carefully. On top lay a faded photograph of her parents on their wedding day, her mother radiant in a simple white dress, her father handsome in his only suit. Beneath it, a small stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon, a few pieces of her mother's costume jewelry, and her father's pocket watch that hadn't worked in decades. As she sifted through the items, something caught her eye, a thick manila envelope she didn't remember. She opened it, finding documents inside, her birth certificate, her parents' marriage license, and to her surprise, legal papers regarding a small property in western Massachusetts. She frowned, pulling out the documents. According to these papers, her father had inherited a small cabin and parcel of land from his uncle shortly before he died. Denise had been only 18 when her parents were killed in the car accident, overwhelmed by grief and sudden independence. If anyone had mentioned this property to her, she'd completely forgotten. The papers included a deed with her father's name, property tax statements from years ago, and a handwritten note from her father that made her heart clench. "Denise, this place was my sanctuary as a boy. I hope someday it will be yours too. Love, Dad. She checked the most recent tax statement, dated over 5 years ago. What had happened to the property since then? Was it still in her family's name, or had it been seized for unpaid taxes? Denise carefully replaced the documents in the envelope, her mind racing. This could be nothing, an abandoned shack on a worthless plot. Or it could be something, a connection to her father she'd never known, perhaps even an asset she desperately needed when her parents died. She repacked the third box with extra care, then gathered all 3 to take with her. They weren't much, but they contained pieces of their history she wasn't willing to abandon. As she struggled up the stairs with the awkward load, her phone rang. Balancing the boxes against the wall, she fished it from her pocket. William's name flashed on the screen. "Hello," she answered, slightly breathless from the exertion. "Denise." William's voice carried clearly. "Is everything all right? You sound winded." "Just carrying some boxes from storage," she explained. "Did you need something?" "Actually, yes." His tone shifted to something more hesitant. "I hate to ask this on a weekend, but there's been a development with Riverside Bakery. Olivia Jensen called me directly this morning. She's received an aggressive offer from Greenshift, significantly undercutting our proposal, which she hasn't even seen yet." Denise felt her stomach drop. How did they even know she was considering sustainability consulting? That's the concerning part. They seem to have inside information about our client pipeline. William's voice tightened. "I wouldn't normally ask this, but could you possibly meet with her today, in person? I think you've established a rapport that might help counter Greenshift's offer." The request shouldn't have surprised her given the crisis meeting yesterday, but Denise still felt unprepared. "I haven't finished the proposal," she admitted. "That's okay. This isn't about the formal proposal. It's about the relationship, about connecting with her as someone who understands her journey." There was a pause. "I know it's asking a lot on your weekend." Denise looked at the boxes at her feet. Physical, reminders of where she'd come from, then thought of Tommy happily playing at his friend's house, of the security her job at Horizon provided them both. "I'll do it," she said firmly. "Let me drop these boxes at home and I can meet her this afternoon." "Thank you, Denise. This means a lot." The relief in William's voice was palpable. "I've texted you her contact information. She's willing to meet at her Jamaica Plain location at 3 p.m. After ending the call, Denise hauled the boxes up the remaining stairs, past the indifferent security guard, and out to the street where she hailed a cab, an expense she would have never allowed herself before Horizon. As the taxi wound through Boston's streets toward her apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about that manila envelope and what it might mean. But for now, she had more immediate concerns. After dropping the boxes at home, she changed into her most professional outfit and headed to Jamaica Plain, mentally preparing her approach for Olivia Jensen. Riverside Bakery was quieter in the late afternoon than during her previous visit. Only a few customers lingered over coffee, and the display cases were nearly empty after a busy day of sales. Olivia waved her to a small table in the corner, where she sat with a stack of papers and a troubled expression. "I'm sorry to drag you out on a Saturday," she began as Denise sat down. "William said you were in the middle of preparing our proposal." "I was, but this is more important," Denise said honestly. "He mentioned you'd heard from Greenshift." Olivia nodded, sliding a glossy folder across the table. "They delivered this yesterday. Somehow they knew exactly what services I was looking for, the same ones we discussed. Their price is almost 40% less than the range William initially quoted me." Denise glanced through the proposal, her heart sinking at the professional presentation and aggressive pricing. On paper it looked impressive, but as she read the fine print she noticed something. "This price is for the initial assessment only," she pointed out. "The implementation costs aren't included, and they're actually higher than our standard rates." "They're just buried in the appendix." Olivia frowned, leaning forward to see where Denise was pointing. "I missed that," she admitted. "It's deliberately obscured," Denise said. "And look here, they guarantee a 30% reduction in your carbon footprint. But if you read the methodology, they achieve this primarily through carbon offsets, not actual operational changes." She continued through the document, highlighting discrepancies and hidden costs. As a consumer who had spent years stretching every dollar, Denise had developed a keen eye for misleading offers and too-good-to-be-true claims. "The thing is," she said finally, setting the proposal aside, "sustainability isn't just about hitting some arbitrary green metric. It's about creating systems that actually sustain themselves, your business, your employees, your community." She met Olivia's eyes directly. "From what you've told me about Riverside, that's what matters to you too." Olivia studied her for a long moment. "You remind me of myself 15 years ago," she said finally, "when everyone said a middle-aged woman with no formal culinary training couldn't start a successful bakery." "But you proved them wrong," Denise responded. "I did." Olivia tapped the GreenShift proposal. "And I didn't do it by taking shortcuts or choosing the cheapest option. I did it by building genuine relationships with my customers, my suppliers, my community." She pushed the glossy folder away. "I'll wait for your proposal, Denise. I trust that you understand what I'm trying to build here." Relief washed over Denise. "Thank you," she said simply. "I promise you won't regret it." As they spoke further about Riverside's specific needs, Denise felt a shift in their relationship, from client and consultant to something approaching allies, perhaps even friends. By the time they concluded their meeting, she had a much clearer vision for the proposal she needed to create. Outside the bakery, Denise checked her phone to find a text from Tommy saying he was having dinner at Jason's house and asking if he could stay longer. She replied affirmatively, then called William to update him on the meeting. "She's staying with us," she reported, unable to keep the satisfaction from her voice. GreenShift made some rookie mistakes in their proposal. Their price point was attractive, but it was basically a bait and switch. "That's fantastic news, Denise." William's relief was audible. "I knew sending you was the right call." "There's something else," she added more hesitantly. "When I was going through my storage unit today, I found some documents about a property my father apparently owned, a cabin in western Massachusetts. I had no idea it existed until today." "Interesting," William said, his tone shifting to curious. "Do you know its current status?" "No. The last tax statement was from 5 years ago. I'm not even sure how to find out if it's still in my name or if it was seized for unpaid taxes." There was a brief pause. "I might be able to help with that," William offered. "A friend of mine works in real estate law. If you bring those documents to the office on Monday, I can ask him to look into it." Denise felt a surge of gratitude. "That would be amazing. Thank you." "It's nothing," William assured her. "And Denise, thank you for today. You're proving to be exactly the person I thought you were when I hired you." After ending the call, Denise stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the day's events settle. The discovery of the cabin, the successful meeting with Olivia. William's continued faith in her. For so long her world had been constricting, opportunities diminishing, options narrowing, hopes fading. But now, suddenly, it was expanding again. New possibilities were appearing from unexpected directions. As she headed to the subway, the rain that had threatened all day finally began to fall. But instead of hurrying to shelter, Denise slowed, her pace turning her face up to the cool droplets. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she was finally coming up for air. Chapter 8. The next weeks brought a whirlwind of developments. Denise's proposal for Riverside Bakery was enthusiastically accepted, earning praise from both Olivia Jensen and William. Two more of Horizon's wavering clients recommitted after personal outreach from their account managers. The immediate crisis seemed to have passed, though William remained concerned about GreenShift's aggressive tactics. Meanwhile, William's friend in real estate law, Marcus Chen, confirmed that the cabin and land in western Massachusetts were indeed still in Denise's name. The property had been flagged for tax delinquency, but the amounts owed were surprisingly modest for 5 years of neglect. The rural location meant property values and tax assessments were low. "You're lucky the county hasn't been aggressive about seizures," Marcus told her when they met at Horizon's offices. "If you want to keep it, you'll need to pay the back taxes plus penalties, about $3,800 total. The good news is the property itself is unencumbered. No mortgage, no liens aside from the tax issue." Denise was stunned. With her new salary, $3,800 was manageable. Difficult, but not impossible. "What's it worth?" she asked. Marcus shrugged. "Hard to say without seeing it. The location isn't prime, it's pretty isolated. But with the current market for rural retreats, maybe $80,000 to $120,000 if it's in decent condition. Less if it needs major work, which after sitting empty for years it probably does." Even at the low end, it represented a significant asset, one that could provide Tommy with opportunities she'd never dared dream of. College, financial security, a safety net. "I'd like to see it," she decided, before making any decisions. William, who had been quietly observing the meeting, spoke up. "Why don't you take Friday off? Make a long weekend of it with Tommy. The autumn colors should be spectacular in the Berkshires this time of year." The suggestion was tempting. Tommy had never been outside Boston, never experienced the countryside she remembered from rare childhood trips to visit relatives, and she had accumulated vacation time she hadn't used. "I could drive you," William offered when she hesitated. "I have a reliable car, and to be honest, I could use a break from the office myself." Denise looked at him in surprise. The offer seemed to cross the ever-blurring line between their professional and personal relationships. Yet she couldn't deny the practical advantages. She didn't own a car, and renting one for the weekend would eat into the funds she needed for the back taxes. "That's very generous," she said carefully. "But I wouldn't want to impose on your weekend." William's smile was genuine. "It's no imposition. Lisa and Eva are visiting Lisa's parents in Chicago, so I'm at loose ends anyway. Besides, I grew up in Western Mass. It would be a chance to revisit old haunts." And so it was decided. They would leave early Friday morning, stay 2 nights in a small inn near the property, and return Sunday afternoon. Tommy was ecstatic at the prospect of his first real trip, chattering non-stop about forests and wildlife, and the possibility that the cabin might have secret rooms or hidden treasure. When Friday arrived, Denise waited nervously in front of her apartment building, Tommy bouncing beside her with barely contained excitement. Their weekend bags sat at their feet, Denise's a second-hand duffel, Tommy's his school backpack stuffed, to capacity. William arrived precisely on time, driving not the luxury car she had half expected, but a practical mid-size SUV. He greeted them both warmly, helping load their bags into the trunk alongside his own modest luggage. "Shotgun!" Tommy called, making a dash for the front passenger seat. "Tommy!" Denise admonished. "That's not—" "It's fine," William interjected with a laugh. "He's got priority seating as the navigator." He handed Tommy a road atlas. "Think you can handle that responsibility?" Tommy nodded solemnly, accepting the atlas as if it were a sacred text. "I'm really good at maps," he assured William. "I got a gold star for my geography project last month." As they set off, Denise experienced a strange sense of displacement. Here she was, in a car with her boss, headed to a property she hadn't known existed a month ago, with her son chatting animatedly in the front seat, as if they did this sort of thing every weekend. The drive west took them through Boston's suburbs, the urban landscape gradually giving way to smaller towns, and eventually, the rolling hills and forests of the Berkshires. Tommy pressed his face against the window, marveling at the autumn foliage in its full glory, trees ablaze with reds, oranges, and golds. "I've never seen so many trees," he whispered in awe. William caught Denise's eye in the rearview mirror, sharing a moment of appreciation for Tommy's wonder. "Wait until you see the mountains," he told the boy. "The view from some of these ridges will take your breath away." They stopped for lunch in a picturesque town, with a classic New England common at its center. As they sat at a small cafe, Tommy peppered William with questions about growing up in the country, about wildlife, about the stars at night without city lights to dim them. William answered each question patiently, occasionally drawing little diagrams on napkins to illustrate his points. Denise watched their interaction with a mixture of gratitude and unease. Tommy, who had never known his father, was clearly soaking up the male attention, and William seemed genuinely delighted by the boy's curiosity and enthusiasm. It was nearly 3 o'clock when they finally turned onto the dirt road that, according to the county records, led to the cabin. The narrow track wound through dense forest, occasionally offering glimpses of a mountain ridge in the distance. According to the GPS, we should be about half a mile from the property now, William said, navigating carefully around potholes. Denise felt a growing sense of anticipation mixed with trepidation. What would they find? A collapsing shack? An overgrown wilderness? And why had her father never mentioned this place to her? The road curved sharply, and suddenly there it was, a small clearing surrounded by towering maples and pines. In the center stood a cabin, not the decrepit structure she had feared, but a solid rustic building with a stone foundation and a steep roof designed to shed heavy snow. William stopped the car, and for a moment they all sat in silence, taking in the scene. "It's like in a storybook," Tommy breathed, then flung open his door and tumbled out before Denise could caution him to wait. She followed more slowly, a emotion tightening her throat. This place had been important to her father, his sanctuary according to his note, yet she had no memory of him ever mentioning it, let alone bringing her here. The cabin appeared weathered but intact. The small porch sagged slightly, and shutters hung askew on some windows, but the overall structure seemed sound. Around the clearing, nature had begun to reclaim the edges, with saplings and underbrush encroaching on what might once have been a maintained yard. William approached with the keys Marcus had provided from the county records office. "Shall we take a look?" "Inside?" he asked gently. Denise nodded, following him to the porch steps with Tommy bouncing ahead. The door creaked in protest as William turned the key, revealing an interior dim with dust and disuse, but surprisingly untouched by vandalism or animal intrusion. The main room was simply furnished with handmade wooden pieces, a table, chairs, a sofa covered in faded fabric. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, while the opposite held shelves lined with books and old board games. Two doors led off to what Denise assumed were bedrooms, and an open archway revealed a basic kitchen with an ancient refrigerator and wood-burning stove. Tommy immediately began exploring, opening cabinets and closets with excited exclamations at each discovery. William moved to examine the structure itself, testing the solidity of beams and floorboards, but Denise stood rooted in the center of the main room, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. This place held parts of her father's life she'd never known. His books, his hand-carved furniture, perhaps even answers to questions she'd carried since his death. On the mantel above the fireplace, partially obscured by dust, sat framed photographs. She approached slowly, lifting one to reveal a much younger version of her father, standing proudly in front of the cabin, arm around a teenage boy Denise didn't recognize. In another, her father sat on the porch with an elderly man who shared his distinctive eyes and jawline, the great uncle who had left him the property perhaps. But it was the third photo that made her breath catch. Her father, young and smiling, cradling an infant wrapped in a pink blanket. Herself, she realized, and beside them, looking exhausted but radiant, her mother. They had been here, all of them, at least once, yet she had no memory of it. "Mom! Mom!" Tommy's excited voice broke through her reverie. "There's a loft upstairs with bunk beds. Can I sleep up there, please?" Denise turned, blinking back tears she hadn't realized were forming. "We're not staying here tonight, remember? We have rooms at the inn." Tommy's face fell. "But it's our cabin. Why can't we stay here?" "Because," William interjected gently, "we need to make sure everything's safe first. The electricity and water have been off for years, but maybe next visit after some repairs." Next visit? The words hung in the air, full of possibility. Denise looked around the space again, seeing it now, not just as a relic of her father's life, but as a potential part of Tommy's future. A place where he could experience nature, learn about self-sufficiency, create memories far removed from the cramped apartments and financial struggles that had defined his early years. "What do you think?" William asked quietly, coming to stand beside her as Tommy continued his exploration. "Marcus can arrange for a proper inspection if you want to keep it." "I think," Denise began, struggling to articulate the swirl of emotions. "I think my father meant for this to be part of my life, our life, and somehow now it can be." They spent another hour examining the cabin and the surrounding property. Behind the structure, they discovered a small stream running through the back of the property, perfect for summer splashing, according to Tommy. A tool shed contained basic equipment for maintenance, all dusty but serviceable. And most surprising of all, a clearing behind the cabin revealed a view of the mountain ridge, spectacular in its autumn glory. As the light began to fade, they reluctantly headed back to the car for the drive to the inn. Tommy, exhausted from his explorations, fell asleep within minutes of starting the journey, his head lolling against the seatbelt. "Thank you for today," Denise said softly, meeting William's eyes in the rearview mirror. "For all of this, helping me find the property, driving us out here, being so kind to Tommy." William smiled. "It's been my pleasure, truly. Tommy's a remarkable boy. And this place, it obviously means a lot to you, even if you're just discovering it." "It feels like a message from my father," she admitted. "A reminder that there are things I don't know, stories I never heard, parts of him I never understood." "Parents are like that," William mused. "We think we know them in one context, then discover they had entire lives, dreams, disappointments we never glimpsed." The personal note in his voice made Denise curious. "You sound like you speak from experience." He nodded, eyes focused, on the darkening road. "My father was a complicated man, brilliant engineer but emotionally distant. It wasn't until after his death that I found his journals and realized how deeply he felt things, how much he regretted not expressing it better." The shared vulnerability created a comfortable silence between them as they drove through the gathering dusk. The inn, when they reached it, was a charming converted farmhouse with wide plank floors and antique furnishings. Their rooms were adjacent, connected by a shared bathroom, a family suite, the innkeeper called it, though Denise was quick to clarify that William was just a friend. After settling Tommy into bed, Denise found herself restless, mind still processing the day's discoveries. She grabbed a sweater and stepped onto the small balcony outside her room, breathing in the crisp autumn air scented with wood smoke from the inn's fireplace. "Can't sleep?" William's voice came from the shadows of the adjacent balcony section. "Too much to think about," she replied. "The cabin, what it means for Tommy's future, how to afford the repairs it will need." "One step at a time," he advised, moving into the pool of light cast by her open door. "First, let's make sure the structure is sound, then worry about improvements." She nodded, grateful for his practical approach. "You've been so helpful. With all this, I don't know how to thank you." "Seeing Tommy's face today was thanks enough," William said, leaning against the balcony railing. "That moment when he first saw the trees, pure wonder. We forget how magical the world can be when seen through a child's eyes." Denise smiled, remembering. "He's never had much chance to experience nature. Our lives have been—" She hesitated. "Constrained." "But not anymore," William pointed out. "You're changing that for him, Denise. The job at Horizon, this cabin, you're expanding his world." The validation warmed her. "I hope so. It's all I've ever wanted, to give him opportunities I never had." William studied her in the dim light. "You know, when I first offered you the job, it was because of your character, your willingness to help Eva even at personal cost. But you've proven yourself far beyond that one act. You're exceptional at connecting with clients, at seeing beyond surface needs to what really matters to them." His praise embarrassed her. "I'm still learning so much." "That's what makes you valuable. You don't pretend to know everything. You listen, you adapt." He straightened, seeming to catch himself becoming too earnest. "Anyway, we should both get some rest. Plenty more exploring to do tomorrow." As he retreated to his room, Denise remained on the balcony, watching the stars emerge in the clear country sky. The day had been full of revelations about her father, about the property, about Tommy's capacity for joy in new experiences. But perhaps the most unexpected revelation was about William himself. Away from the office, divorced from his role as her boss, he was revealing dimensions she hadn't fully appreciated before. His patience with Tommy, his reverence for nature, the hints of his own complicated family history. For the first time, she was seeing him not just as William Sanchez, successful entrepreneur and her employer, but simply as William, a man with his own story, his own vulnerabilities, his own capacity for kindness. The realization was both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it made their growing friendship seem more natural, more equal. Unsettling because it added yet another layer of complexity to her already evolving life. As she finally returned to her room, checking on Tommy one last time, before settling into bed, Denise found herself wondering, had she ever experienced similar challenges or connections in your life? A moment when helping someone else led to unexpected opportunities, or a time when a forgotten piece of your past suddenly resurfaced, changing your perspective on everything? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Chapter 9, Sunday, came all too quickly, bringing with it the reluctant necessity of returning to Boston. Tommy begged for just one more day at the cabin, his imagination now filled with plans for tree houses, campfires, and wildlife observation posts. Denise promised they would return once the property was properly assessed and made safe. The drive back felt different. Where the journey out had been characterized by anticipation and uncertainty, the return carried a sense of possibility. Conversation flowed easily between the three of them, punctuated by Tommy's excited questions about when they could visit the cabin again and what seasons were best for different activities. "Winter is magical," William told him. "The whole forest under snow, animal tracks to follow, icicles hanging from the eaves like crystal daggers. Can we come in winter, please, Mum?" Tommy pleaded from the back seat, where he'd insisted on riding this time to better see the passing scenery. Denise caught William's eye, sharing a smile at Tommy's enthusiasm. "Maybe," she hedged. "It depends on the inspection results and what repairs are needed first. Speaking of which," William said, "I took some photos of areas that might need attention. The sagging porch, those loose shutters, the roof over the back section. Nothing catastrophic, but definitely issues to address before winter." Denise nodded gratefully. "I was thinking of asking Marcus if he knows any contractors in that area who could give me an estimate." "Good idea. And I might know someone, too. An old school friend runs a construction company in Pittsfield. I can ask if he services that area." By the time they reached Boston in the early evening, Denise felt both exhausted and invigorated. The weekend had been transformative, opening doors she hadn't known existed. As William pulled up in front of her apartment building, she felt an unexpected reluctance to see the trip end. "Thank you again," she said, as he helped unload their bags. "For everything." "It was my pleasure," he replied, his expression warm. "Tommy, high five for being the best explorer on the expedition." Tommy slapped his hand with enthusiasm. "Next time we go, I'm bringing my binoculars, and we need marshmallows." "For the fireplace," William laughed. "Sounds like a plan. You'd better start a list." After goodbyes and one last wave as William drove away, Denise and Tommy trudged upstairs to their apartment. It felt smaller somehow, confined after the expansive freedom of the countryside, but it was home, for now at least. "Mom?" Tommy asked as she tucked him into bed that night. "Is Mr. William going to be our friend now, not just your boss?" The question caught her off guard. "I think so," she answered carefully. "We've gotten to know each other better outside of work." Tommy nodded, satisfied. "Good, I like him. He explains things really well and doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby." "That's true," Denise agreed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "And he was very kind to drive us all that way." "Do you like him too?" Denise paused, considering the loaded simplicity of her son's question. "Yes," she said finally, "I like him too." The next morning brought a return to routine. Tommy to school, Denise to Horizon. But something had shifted, both in her personal outlook and in her interactions at the office. She carried herself with a new confidence, born from the weekend's discoveries, and the growing sense that her life was expanding in directions she'd never anticipated. William, too, seemed different at work, warmer, less formal in their interactions, though still maintaining appropriate professional boundaries in front of others. He introduced her to several new clients that week, explicitly praising her work with Riverside Bakery and positioning her as a rising talent within the firm. October flowed into November, bringing the first hints of winter to Boston. The cabin inspection was completed, revealing issues that needed addressing but confirming the overall structural soundness of the property. Denise paid the back taxes from her savings, officially securing her ownership. William's friend in Pittsfield provided reasonable quotes for the necessary repairs, which could be completed before the worst of winter set in. At Horizon, the immediate crisis with Greenshift seemed to have subsided, though William remained vigilant. Denise's client portfolio expanded to include 2 more small businesses transitioning to sustainable practices. She found herself thriving in the role, drawing on her life experiences to connect with clients in ways her more traditionally credentialed colleagues sometimes couldn't. "You have an authenticity they respond to," Olivia Chen told her over lunch one day. "When you talk about budgetary constraints or practical implementation, they know you understand it's not just theoretical for them." It was a revelation to Denise that her years of financial struggle, the very experiences she'd been ashamed of, that had made her feel like an imposter in Horizon's sleek offices, were actually assets in her new role. Her hardship had forged a perspective that clients valued. As Thanksgiving approached, Tommy's school organized a special celebration where parents were invited to share what they were thankful for. Denise, sitting in a tiny chair in his classroom, felt a lump in her throat as she listened to other parents talk about their blessings, many taken for granted in their comfortable lives. When her turn came, she spoke simply. "I'm thankful for second chances," she said, meeting Tommy's eyes across the circle. "For the opportunity to build a better life, for the kindness of others who believe in you when you've stopped believing in yourself, and for discovering that sometimes what seems like a setback can actually be the beginning of something wonderful." Tommy beamed at her, pride shining in his face. Later, his teacher pulled Denise aside. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," she said warmly. Tommy has blossomed these past months. His confidence, his engagement in class, it's like watching a different child. That evening, as they walked home through streets decorated for the upcoming holiday, Tommy skipping ahead to examine shop windows, Denise's phone rang. It was William. "I hope I'm not interrupting your evening," he began, "but I wanted to catch you before you made other plans. Laser and Ava are hosting Thanksgiving at their place, and they asked me to invite you and Tommy to join us. Nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends." The invitation shouldn't have surprised her, given the friendship that had developed between their families. Ava and Tommy had become regular playmates, with Lisa often including Tommy in weekend activities when Denise needed to work. Yet something in William's tone, a hint of uncertainty perhaps, gave her pause. This wasn't just a casual invitation, it represented another step in the evolving relationship between them, another blurring of the line between professional and personal. "That sounds lovely," she said finally. "We'd be honored." "Can I bring something?" "Just yourselves," William assured her, though Lisa mentioned Tommy might enjoy helping Eva make pies the day before, if you're free. The holiday itself was everything Denise could have hoped for, warm, chaotic, in the best way, filled with laughter and good food. Lisa's home accommodated the gathering perfectly, with children racing through the first floor, while adults conversed in the living room and kitchen. Besides William, Lisa, and Eva, there were several other guests: Olivia Chen and her husband, Maggie and her partner Ruth, and a few of Lisa's friends from her neighborhood. What struck Denise most was how easily she and Tommy were absorbed into this makeshift family. No one treated them as charity cases or outsiders. They were simply welcomed, included, valued for themselves. After dinner, as the children watched a movie in the den and the adults lingered over coffee and dessert, Lisa pulled Denise aside. "I wanted to thank you," she said, her expression earnest. "Thank me? For what? You've done so much for us." Lisa smiled, shaking her head. "For William. I've seen such a change in him since you came into our lives. Before he was all work all the time. Success was his only measure. Now—" She glanced toward the living room where William was engaged in animated conversation with Olivia's husband. "Now he has perspective, balance." Denise felt a flutter of uncertainty. "I'm not sure I'm responsible for that." "I am," Lisa stated firmly. "You and Tommy remind him why the work matters in the first place, that it's about people, not just profit margins or sustainability, metrics." Before Denise could respond, they were interrupted by Tommy racing in for seconds on pie. The moment passed, But Lisa's words lingered in Denise's mind throughout the evening and into the following days. Had she really affected William's outlook so profoundly? And if so, what did that mean for their relationship going forward? December arrived with a flurry of activity both at Horizon and in Denise's personal life. The cabin repairs were completed just before the first heavy snowfall of the season. William surprised Tommy with a sturdy pair of snow boots for your next wilderness expedition, while Denise quietly purchased warm winter gear for both of them in anticipation of future cabin visits. At work, the year-end rush kept everyone busy with client reports and planning sessions for the coming year. Horizon had not only weathered the Green Shift challenge, but emerged stronger, with several new high-profile clients specifically requesting Denise as their account manager after hearing about her work with Riverside Bakery. One evening in mid-December, Denise was working late, finalizing a presentation for a new client meeting the following day. The office was nearly empty, most employees having departed hours earlier for holiday preparations and family obligations. A knock on her office doorframe startled her. William stood there, coat over his arm. "Still here?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. "It's nearly 8. Denise rubbed her eyes, surprised by the time. "I wanted to finish this presentation. Mrs. Patterson is watching Tommy, but I should get going." "I thought you might still be here," William said, stepping into the office. "That's why I came back. I was hoping to catch you before you left." Something in his demeanor made Denise pause. "Is everything okay?" He nodded, but his expression remained serious. "I've been meaning to talk to you about something important, about Horizon's future and yours with the company." Denise felt a flicker of alarm. Despite her successes, the fear of losing her position, of having the stability she'd built come crashing down, never entirely disappeared. William must have read her concern. "It's nothing bad," he assured her quickly. "Actually, it's quite the opposite." He sat in the chair opposite her desk, gathering his thoughts. "When I founded Horizon 10 years ago, I had a vision of building something meaningful, a company that helped businesses transition to sustainable practices without sacrificing their economic viability. I think we've done that mostly. But lately, I've been questioning whether we've gone far enough." Denise listened attentively, uncertain where this was leading. "Your work with Riverside and our other small business clients has shown me something important," William continued. "The principles of sustainability aren't just about environmental impact. They're about creating systems that support people, that allow for renewal and growth rather than depletion." He leaned forward, his expression intent. "I'm considering a significant expansion of our small business division, creating a specific program for businesses in underserved communities. Lower fees, more flexible implementation timelines, mentorship opportunities. And I want you to lead it." Denise stared at him, stunned. "Me? But I've only been here a few months. Surely Olivia or someone more experienced has the vision for this that you do," William finished for her. "You understand these clients in a way others don't because you've lived their reality. You know the difference between theoretical solutions and practical ones. The offer was overwhelming, exciting but terrifying. It would mean more responsibility, higher visibility within the company, broader impact. But it would also mean stepping even further beyond her comfort zone, taking risks in a very public way." "It's a big decision," William acknowledged. "You don't need to answer now. Think about it over the holidays. But I wanted you to know that this is the direction I see for both Horizon and your role within it." As he rose to leave, he added, "And completely unrelated to this professional matter, I was wondering if you and Tommy might want to visit the cabin this weekend. The forecast calls for snow, and I thought Tommy might enjoy seeing it in its winter glory." The sudden shift from a potentially life-changing career discussion to a casual invitation threw Denise momentarily. Yes, I think he'd love that, we both would." William smiled, some of the intensity leaving his expression. "Excellent. We can discuss logistics tomorrow. For now, finish up here and get home to Tommy. The presentation looks great by the way." After he left, Denise sat motionless, processing the conversation's implications. The career opportunity was enormous, far beyond anything she could have imagined when she'd first stepped into Horizon's offices. But it was the cabin invitation that left her most unsettled. These dual aspects of their relationship, professional and personal, were becoming increasingly intertwined. William was simultaneously her boss, offering her a significant promotion, and her friend, planning family outings with her son. The boundaries were blurring in ways that both excited and concerned her. As she packed up her materials and headed home through Boston's chilly streets, Denise reflected on how drastically her life had changed in just a few short months. From desperate job seeker to potential division leader. From struggling single mother to property owner. From isolated survivor to part of a growing circle of friends and supporters. All because she had stopped to help a lost little girl, even when it seemed like the worst possible timing. The realization filled her with a profound sense of gratitude mixed with responsibility. Whatever opportunities came her way now, whether leading a new division at Horizon or exploring a deeper connection with William, she owed it to herself, to Tommy, and to that desperate woman she had been to make the most of them. The future suddenly seemed full of possibilities, some thrilling, some intimidating, all unexpected. But for perhaps the first time in her adult life, Denise felt ready to embrace them, whatever they might bring. Chapter 10. The cabin in winter was everything William had promised and more. A blanket of pristine snow transformed the property into a wonderland that left Tommy speechless with awe, at least until he recovered enough to dive headfirst into a snowdrift, emerging with a face-splitting grin and a cry of pure joy. They spent Saturday exploring the snowy forest, following animal tracks, building an elaborate snow fort and ending the day with hot chocolate by the newly repaired fireplace. The cabin, now equipped with basic necessities and safety features, felt welcoming despite its rustic simplicity. On Sunday morning, while Tommy was still sleeping in the loft he'd claimed as his domain, Denise and William sat on the porch, bundled against the cold, watching the sunrise paint the snow-covered landscape in hues of pink and gold. "I've been thinking about your offer," Denise said, cradling a steaming mug of coffee between gloved hands. "The new division." William glanced at her, expression neutral. "And?" "I want to do it," she said firmly. "It aligns perfectly with what I believe. Sustainability should be about creating systems that support people and communities, not just environmental metrics." He smiled, visibly pleased. "I was hoping you'd say that." "But," she continued, "I have conditions." This caught his attention. He turned more fully toward her, eyebrows raised in question. "First, I want to continue personally managing the Riverside account. Olivia Jensen took a chance on me, and I won't abandon that relationship." William nodded. "Reasonable. What else?" "I want flexible hours." Denise took a deep breath. "Tommy needs me present in his life, especially now that things are changing so quickly. I'll put in the work, you know I will, but I need to be able to attend his school events, to be home for dinner most nights." "We can absolutely accommodate that," William agreed. "In fact, I think it sets a good example for the whole company. Anything else?" Denise hesitated, then plunged ahead. "Yes, I need clarity about our personal relationship." The words hung in the frosty air between them. William's expression shifted from professional interest to something more guarded, more vulnerable. "What kind of clarity?" he asked quietly. "We've become friends," Denise stated carefully. "You, me, Tommy, Eva, Lisa. Our families have connected in ways I never expected. But now you're offering me this significant professional advancement, and I need to know that it's based on my merits, not on—" she struggled to find the right words— "personal considerations." William was silent for a long moment, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "The offer is absolutely based on your professional capabilities," he said finally. "You've proven yourself repeatedly with clients, particularly those who might have been skeptical of traditional consultants. That's why I want you to lead this initiative." He paused, seeming to choose his next words with care. "As for our personal connection, yes, I value the friendship that's developed between us and our families. I enjoy Tommy's company enormously, and—" he met her eyes directly. "I've come to care for you in ways that go beyond professional respect or even friendship. Denise felt her heart quicken, though whether from alarm or something else, she wasn't entirely sure. "But," William continued, firmly, "I would never let those feelings influence business decisions or put pressure on you in any way. If you want to keep our relationship strictly professional or limited to friendship only, I will respect that completely. The job offer stands regardless." His honesty simultaneously touched and complicated things. Denise had suspected his feelings might be evolving beyond friendship, just as she'd been struggling with her own growing attraction to him. But having it acknowledged so directly required a response she wasn't sure she was ready to give. "I don't know what I want yet," she admitted. "These past months have brought so many changes. Sometimes I feel like I'm still catching up to my own life." William nodded, understanding in his eyes. "There's no rush. The new division won't launch until February. And as for the personal aspect, we have time. I'm not going anywhere." Before she could respond, the cabin door burst open behind them, and Tommy appeared, still in his pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. "It snowed more," he exclaimed, pointing to the fresh dusting that had fallen overnight. "Can we build a snowman family before we have to leave?" The moment between Denise and William dissolved, but the understanding they had reached remained. As they helped Tommy roll increasingly large snowballs across the yard, Denise felt a curious lightness. The conversation had been difficult but necessary, clearing the air of unspoken questions and setting boundaries that made her feel more secure in both her professional advancement and their evolving personal relationship. By the time they returned to Boston that evening, Denise had mentally committed to the new role, excited by the possibilities it presented. Tommy chattered all the way home about their next cabin visit, already planning elaborate projects for each season. The weeks leading up to Christmas passed in a blur of activity. At Horizon, preliminary planning for the new division kept Denise busy, while Tommy's school scheduled an exhausting array of holiday events. Through it all, William maintained a respectful distance personally while continuing to mentor her professionally, true to his word that the promotion stood on its own merits. On Christmas Eve, Denise and Tommy attended a small gathering at Lisa's home. The intimacy of sharing the holiday with this newfound extended family, Lisa, Eva, William, and a few others who had become important in their lives, contrasted sharply with previous years, when they had often spent the holiday alone. Denise doing her best to create magic for Tommy with extremely limited resources. After the children were finally asleep, the adults sat in Lisa's living room, the tree lights casting a warm glow as they shared quiet conversation. "I have something to show you," Lisa said suddenly, pulling out her phone and bringing up an email. "The social workers who helped with Eva that day sent me this." She handed the phone to Denise, who found herself looking at a photograph of the bakery where she had taken Eva for food, the moment that had changed everything. It had been captured by a security camera, showing Denise kneeling beside the small, disheveled girl, offering her a paper-wrapped sandwich with an expression of such gentle concern that it made Denise's throat tighten. "I never saw this," she whispered. "They included it in their report," Lisa explained. One moment of kindness captured forever. William, sitting beside Denise on the sofa, looked at the image over her shoulder. "The pivot point," he said softly. "The moment everything changed." Denise nodded, unable to speak past the emotion, clogging her throat. In that frozen instant, she had made a choice that seemed destined to ruin her chances, yet had instead opened doors she'd never imagined possible. Later, as she and Tommy walked the short distance to their apartment, snow beginning to fall in large, lazy flakes around them, Denise felt a profound sense of gratitude. The year had brought challenges and changes, fears and triumphs, but through it all they had not just survived but begun to thrive. Tommy skipped ahead, trying to catch snowflakes on his tongue. Denise watched him, this resilient, joyful child who had weathered their hardest times without losing his capacity for wonder. Her phone buzzed with a text message. "William. Just wanted to say again how glad I am that you and Tommy are in our lives. Looking forward to the new year and all it will bring. Merry Christmas, Denise." She smiled, typing back, "Merry Christmas to you too. Thank you for believing in me." As they reached their apartment building, Tommy turned back to her, face alight with excitement. "Mom, I almost forgot to tell you. I got picked to read a poem at the Winter Assembly in January. Miss Davis said I was the best reader in class." "That's wonderful, sweetie," Denise said, hugging him close. "I'm so proud of you. You'll be able to come, right? It's on a Tuesday morning." "Absolutely," she promised without hesitation. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. In her pocket, her phone buzzed again. Another message from William. "Forgot to mention, the cabin contractor called. All set for our New Year's weekend visit if you're still interested. Perfect sledding." Conditions, apparently. Looking at her son's excited face, feeling the weight of her phone with its message of adventures to come, Denise felt a certainty she'd long ago stopped expecting from life. Whatever challenges the future held, at work with William, with balancing her expanding world, they were challenges born of opportunity, not desperation. And that made all the difference. What new challenges await Denise as she steps into her leadership role? Will her relationship with William evolve past friendship into something deeper? And as Tommy blossoms in their new circumstances, what unexpected talents and dreams might emerge in this child, who has only known limitation until now? Chapter 11. January brought freezing temperatures to Boston and fresh momentum to Denise's life. The New Year's weekend at the cabin had been magical. Sledding, snowshoeing, board games by the fire, and a quiet celebration as they watched the year turn from the cabin's porch, sparklers in hand against the backdrop of star-filled country sky. Tommy had returned to school invigorated, throwing himself into preparations for the winter assembly with characteristic enthusiasm. Denise watched with quiet pride as he practiced his poem each evening, his confidence growing with every recitation. At Horizon, planning for the new division accelerated. William gave Denise increasing authority over its development, encouraging her to shape its mission and structure according to her vision. She found herself drawing on experiences from her own life, designing programs that addressed the real barriers small businesses faced in implementing sustainable practices. "What about a microloan program?" she suggested during a planning meeting in mid-January. "For businesses that can't afford the upfront costs of transitions, even knowing they'll save money long-term?" William considered this, nodding slowly. "We'd need financial partners, banks or credit unions willing to provide favorable terms." "I might have an idea about that," offered Marcus Chen, who had joined the planning team as legal counsel. "My wife sits on the board of Commonwealth Community Credit Union. They're looking for impact investment opportunities, especially in underserved areas." Piece by piece, the new division took shape. Denise found herself working with confidence she would have thought impossible just months earlier. Her suggestions met with respect, rather than the dismissal she had feared. On a Tuesday morning in late January, Denise sat in the elementary school auditorium, camera ready to capture Tommy's big moment at the winter assembly. She had arrived early, securing a seat in the front row after clearing her attendance with William days in advance. As the program proceeded through various class performances, Denise found herself reflecting on all that had changed since September. Their apartment now featured real furniture instead of makeshift solutions. Tommy had joined the science club and a weekend soccer league. She had a career, not just a job, but a pathway with growth and purpose. "Next," announced the principal, "we have Tommy Moore from Miss Davis's third-grade class reading Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost." Tommy walked to the center of the stage, looking small but determined in his best shirt and the tie he had insisted on wearing. He took a deep breath, found Denise in the audience, and began to recite with clear, steady confidence. As she listened to her son's voice filling the auditorium, Denise felt a presence beside her. Turning slightly, she was surprised to see William slipping into the empty seat next to hers. "Hope you don't mind," he whispered. "I wrapped up my meeting early." The fact that he had come, that he considered Tommy's performance important, enough to rearrange his schedule, touched her deeply. Together they watched as Tommy completed the poem without a single misstep, his voice strong on the final lines. "The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep." The audience applauded warmly, and Denise felt tears prick her eyes at the sight of Tommy's proud smile as he took a small bow. "He's remarkable," William said softly, as Tommy returned to sit with his class. "You've raised an extraordinary young man." "Thank you," Denise replied, her voice thick with emotion, "for coming. It means a lot to both of us." After the assembly, as parents mingled with teachers and children in the school cafeteria over cookies and juice, Tommy raced up to them, beaming with excitement. "Mom, Mr. William, did you see? I didn't forget any words." "You were perfect," Denise assured him, pulling him into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "Indeed," William agreed, offering a high five. "A performance worthy of Broadway." Tommy glowed under the praise. "Ms. Davis said I have a natural gift for public speaking. She thinks I should join the debate team next year." As they chatted, Denise noticed several other parents watching them with curious expressions. She realized how they must appear. A family unit, celebrating a child's achievement together. The thought was both disconcerting and strangely comfortable. "I should get back to the office," William said after a few minutes. "Tommy, congratulations again. That was truly impressive." "Thanks for coming," Tommy said with uncharacteristic shyness. "It was really cool that you were here." Something in her son's tone made Denise look at him more closely. She recognized the expression. It was the same one he wore when speaking about the fathers of his friends, a mixture of curiosity and longing for that male presence he'd never had in his life. The realization gave her pause. Tommy was forming an attachment to William, perhaps already had formed one deeper than she'd recognized. It was natural, of course. William had been kind and attentive, including Tommy in activities, listening to his ideas, treating him with respect. But what would happen if things changed? If the professional relationship ended, or if the personal friendship didn't develop as Tommy clearly hoped? These thoughts occupied Denise throughout the day and into the evening as she prepared dinner in their small kitchen. Tommy sat at the table, working on a science project about ecosystems, occasionally asking for help with vocabulary or concepts. "Mum," he said suddenly, looking up from his work, "do you like Mr. William?" The question, echoing one he'd asked months earlier, but now laden with new significance, made Denise pause in chopping vegetables. "Yes," she said carefully. "He's been a good friend to us, and he's a good boss." Tommy seemed dissatisfied with this answer. "But do you like him, the way Mrs. Patterson liked Mr. Patterson before he died?" The directness of childhood never ceased to catch her off guard. "That's complicated, Tommy," she replied, buying time. "Why? You smile a lot when he's around. And he looks at you the way Jason's dad looks at Jason's mom in the photos on their fridge." Denise set down her knife, realizing this conversation deserved her full attention. She moved to sit across from Tommy at the table. "Relationships between adults are complicated," she tried to explain. "William and I work together. He's also becoming a friend. But anything beyond that takes time and careful consideration." Tommy frowned slightly. "Because of me?" "No, sweetie. Not because of you." Denise reached for his hand. "Because I have to be sure about my own feelings and his, and how any changes might affect all of us. You, me, William, Eva, Lisa. We've built something good together. I don't want to risk that unless I'm very certain." Tommy seemed to consider this, his young face serious. "I think you should," he said finally. Like him, I mean. He makes you happy, I can tell." The simplicity of his perspective made Denise smile despite her concerns. "I'll keep that in mind," she promised. "Now, tell me more about these ecosystems you're studying." The next day at Horizon, Denise found herself unusually aware of William's presence in meetings, of the way he deferred to her expertise when discussing the new division, of the quiet support he offered when a senior board member questioned some aspect of the plan. Their professional relationship had evolved into a partnership of equals, despite the formal hierarchy that placed him above her. After a particularly productive strategy session that ran late into the evening, they found themselves alone in the conference room, gathering materials as the other team members departed. "That went well," William observed, collecting his notes. The board is fully behind the initiative now. Your presentation on community impact was the turning point. Denise smiled, pleased by the validation. It helps when you believe in what you're proposing. This isn't just a business strategy to me, it's personal. That's what makes it powerful. William paused, then added more hesitantly, "Speaking of personal matters, I've been wondering if you'd consider having dinner with me this weekend, just the two of us." The invitation hung in the air between them. They had spent considerable time together over the past months, but always in groups or with the children present. This would be different, explicitly moving beyond friendship into something more deliberate, more defined. Denise thought of Tommy's observation the previous evening, of the growing attachment she couldn't deny, of the fear that still lingered about combining her professional and personal lives. "Yes," she said finally. "I'd like that." William's expression brightened visibly. "Excellent. Saturday? I know a place in the North End that's quiet enough for actual conversation." Saturday works. Mrs. Patterson has been asking to have Tommy for a sleepover. He adores her husband's old model train set. As they finished gathering their materials and walked together to the elevator, Denise felt both nervous anticipation and a curious sense of inevitability, as if their lives had been moving toward this juncture from the moment she stopped to help a lost child on a desperate morning. Saturday evening arrived with a flurry of activity. Dropping Tommy at Mrs. Patterson's, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a simple dress she'd purchased for client meetings, checking her appearance with an anxiety she hadn't felt in years. The restaurant William had chosen was indeed perfect, intimate without being overly romantic, elegant without being intimidating. As they settled at a corner table, Denise found herself unexpectedly at ease, the nervousness fading, as they fell into conversation that flowed as naturally as it had during their cabin weekends. Over antipasto and wine, they spoke about the new division, about Tommy's growing interest in debate and public speaking, about the cabin and plans for spring improvements. But as the main course arrived, William gently shifted the conversation to more personal territory. "I realized recently that for all we've shared these past months, there's still so much I don't know about you," he said. "Your life before we met, what brought you to Boston, your dreams beyond Horizon." Denise took a sip of wine, considering her response. "There's not much to tell about my life before Horizon," she said carefully. "After my parents died, I was on my own. I moved to Boston for a job that fell through shortly after I arrived. Then I met Tommy's father, a brief relationship that ended before Tommy was born. Since then, it's been just the two of us doing our best to survive." William listened attentively, his expression compassionate rather than pitying. "And your dreams? Beyond Horizon, beyond survival?" The question startled her. For so long, her horizon had extended only as far as the next bill payment, the next meal, the next day. The luxury of dreaming had seemed beyond reach. "I'm still figuring that out," she admitted. "For years, my only dream was security for Tommy, food, shelter, education. Now that those basic needs are met, I'm discovering there might be more to want from life." "Such as?" William prompted gently. Denise considered the question seriously. "I want to make a difference through this new division, to help others who are where I was not so long ago. I want to see Tommy continue to thrive, to discover his own passions and talents." She paused, then added more softly, "And personally, I want connections, relationships that matter. After years of isolation, that's what I've valued most about these recent months, being part of something larger than just survival." William nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Connection is fundamental. We're not meant to walk through life alone." He hesitated, then continued with careful honesty. "When Lisa's husband left them, I stepped in to help because they're family. But it taught me something important about myself, that my success meant nothing without meaningful relationships to give it context." "Is that why you founded Horizon?" Denise asked. "To create meaning beyond success?" "Partly," he acknowledged. "I'd achieved everything I thought I wanted in corporate finance, the corner office, the impressive salary, the professional respect. But it felt hollow. I wanted to build something that aligned with my values, that contributed to a better world for Eva's generation. The following weeks unfolded like the soft turning of a page, revealing a new chapter in Denise's life that felt both exhilarating and daunting. At Horizon, the momentum was palpable. With the board's backing and the enthusiastic support of clients, the new small business division began to take shape. Denise found herself spearheading initiatives that blended practical financial solutions with sustainable practices, micro-loan programs, mentorship circles, and community partnerships. Every meeting and every proposal was a reaffirmation that her struggles, her very real history of hardship, had prepared her uniquely for this challenge. Late one crisp February afternoon, after a particularly intense strategy session, Denise stepped out onto the building's small terrace. The cityscape of Boston shimmered in the fading light, and for a moment she allowed herself to simply breathe. The weight of responsibility had been immense, yet with it came a newfound sense of purpose. She thought of Tommy, his bright smile, his endless curiosity, and the promise of a future that was now within reach for both of them. That evening, back at home, Tommy was busy constructing a makeshift spaceship out of cardboard boxes, his imaginative chatter echoing through the apartment. Denise sat at the tiny dining table, reviewing the latest client feedback. A notification from Horizon's internal messaging system pinged, and she saw a message from William. "Denise, great job today. Your insights with the community partners have us all inspired. Let's celebrate with dinner tonight at the new bistro near the office. William." Her heart lifted at the simple note. It wasn't just professional validation. It was an invitation to share in a moment of joy. After ensuring Tommy was settled for the night, Denise changed into something comfortable yet polished and headed out. At the bistro, a warmly lit, modern space with hints of rustic charm, William greeted her with a smile that felt both sincere and intimate. Over dinner, conversation flowed as naturally as it had during their earlier outings. They talked about the progress of the new division, the creative ideas that were turning into real projects, and the surprising ways in which Denise's past was not a burden, but a wellspring of insight for helping others. William shared his own reflections on a life spent chasing conventional success until he discovered that true achievement meant lifting others up. His words resonated deeply with her, and in that moment, the boundary between mentor and friend seemed to blur. Later that night, as they walked out of the bistro into the cool Boston air, William paused under a street lamp. "Denise, there's something I want you to know," he began, his tone low and earnest. "These past months I've come to realize that what matters most isn't just our work. It's the people we become along the way. You've not only transformed your own life, you've helped transform others' lives too. I care about you deeply, both professionally and personally, and I want to explore where this connection can take us, with no pressure, just honest companionship." Denise felt her breath catch. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. She reached for his hand, a quiet affirmation of shared vulnerability and mutual respect. "I'm still learning about what I want, William," she admitted softly, "but I do know that every day I wake up feeling grateful for the second chance I've been given, and for the people who make me believe I deserve it." The words hung between them as they continued their walk, the city lights a gentle witness to their quiet commitment to new beginnings. Over the next few months, life settled into a rhythm that balanced ambition with tenderness. At Horizon, Denise's leadership of the small business division not only proved profitable, but also became a beacon for companies looking to create sustainable futures without sacrificing human connection. The micro-loan program she designed, in partnership with the local credit union, received accolades and invitations to speak at industry conferences. Her team admired her for her authenticity, and even skeptical board members began to see that the true value of sustainability lay in its people-first approach. Outside of work, her personal life blossomed in unexpected ways. William and Denise nurtured a friendship that steadily deepened into something more. Their dinners together, once strictly about business, evolved into evenings filled with laughter, shared memories, and gentle teasing about childhood dreams and future possibilities. They found solace in each other's stories, Denise recounting moments of quiet desperation that had once defined her world, and William revealing the loneliness behind his early corporate triumphs. One chilly April evening, after a long day, at Horizon, Denise and William drove out to the cabin in western Massachusetts. It had become their shared retreat, a place where work and life mingled in the gentle cadence of nature. The cabin, now modestly renovated and brimming with the echoes of the past, provided a sanctuary where they could simply be. With Tommy occasionally joining for a few joyful hours and then heading back to Boston, the cabin weekends became cherished rituals. That particular afternoon, as they sat on the cabin's creaking porch wrapped in blankets and watching the late sun dip below the distant hills, Denise broached a subject that had been on her mind. "William," she said, her voice thoughtful, "I found something in one of the old boxes from the storage unit that I haven't looked at in years. A letter from my father. I never really understood it until now. He wrote about hope, about rebuilding, about believing that even in our darkest moments, something beautiful awaits us." William's gaze softened. "Sometimes our past holds the key to unlocking our future," he murmured. "Maybe your father knew that you'd one day stand here, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a woman who could change the world around her." In that moment, Denise felt the threads of her life weaving together. The hardships, the small acts of kindness that had set her on this path, the unanticipated opportunities, and the gentle, persistent hope that had always flickered within her. With William by her side, and Tommy's laughter echoing in her heart, she felt ready to embrace whatever challenges and joys lay ahead. Back in Boston, the new division at Horizon flourished. Denise's initiatives not only strengthened existing client relationships, but also opened doors to partnerships with community organizations and local governments. Her story, of a mother who once had nothing and who transformed her struggles into strength, became a quiet inspiration among her colleagues. In meetings, she would share her journey not as a tale of sorrow, but as a testament to resilience and the power of compassion. Her relationship with William, too, found its own balance. They maintained clear boundaries at work, ensuring that their personal bond only enriched their professional collaboration. In the rare, quiet moments away from the bustle of corporate life, they allowed themselves to explore the layers of their connection. Their conversations ranged from shared laughter over Tommy's latest school achievement to deep discussions about dreams and fears. They even started planning a future family vacation, a trip that might someday include both sets of families, bridging the gap between work, love, and the everyday magic of life. Tommy, ever perceptive, began to understand that his mother was no longer just the woman who worked tirelessly to keep their world afloat. He saw her as someone who believed in second chances, who understood that failures could lead to new opportunities. When he was asked in class about his future dreams, he shyly confessed that he wanted to follow in his mom's footsteps, helping people and making the world a better place. Denise's heart swelled with pride at his innocence and hope. Brisk May morning, as the blossoms began to hint at summer, Horizon held a small celebration to mark the official launch of the new small business division. Colleagues and clients gathered in a bright conference hall adorned with fresh flowers and art that celebrated the local community. In her brief remarks, Denise spoke passionately about the power of perseverance and the belief that every person, no matter how overlooked or underestimated, had the potential to create ripples of change. "When I helped a little girl on a cold morning," she said, her eyes shining with unshed tears, "I never imagined that one act of kindness would open doors to a future I once thought impossible. Today, I stand before you not as someone who overcame hardship, but as someone who learned that our struggles can light the way to a brighter tomorrow." The applause that followed was warm and sincere, a testament to the impact of her journey. Later, as she mingled with guests, she found William by her side, his hand resting lightly on hers. In that simple gesture, they both understood that their paths had converged in the most unexpected and beautiful way. As the day turned to dusk and the celebration wound down, Denise looked out over the city skyline, a gentle smile playing on her lips. She thought back to the lost little girl, the missed job interview, and the chain of events that had reshaped her life. Every twist and turn, every sacrifice and every blessing had led her here, to a place of hope, connection, and promise. In the soft glow of twilight, as the lights of Boston twinkled like distant stars, Denise realized that the future was not a single destination, but a tapestry woven of countless moments, each one an opportunity to choose love, to embrace second chances, and to create something lasting. With Tommy sleeping soundly at home and William's steady presence beside her, Denise knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And as the first notes of a gentle winter melody floated in the air, a quiet voice in her heart whispered, "You did it. You made it. Congratulations." Type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.